What's up again, everybody, and welcome to the Guardians of the Galaxy card review, episode number 1. With the Guardians of the Galaxy set looming closer and closer, now unfortunately pushed to next month, at the beginning of next month, we're going to go ahead and start going through each and every card that has been spoiled, and we're going to talk about whether or not that card is worth your time, whether it's good in draft or constructed, what we think about them. We're going to be going through these set alphabetically, and if there are any cards that I am missing, let me know in the comments below, and I'll pop those into another video so that I can talk about those as well. All right, the first character up is Adam Warlock. We know of the common and the uncommon version. Both his common and uncommon version are 5-cost mask characters with that Guardian affiliation. We've got on his sides a 1/3/5, a 1/5/5, and a 2/6/6 side. 4/5 energy, that's above average by a little bit. The one side with that 3 attack is the weak point, but the 6/6 side is just slightly above average. I would call that above average because of that 6/6 size. I don't think you're getting hurt too much by that 3/5 side being there. His common version says, while Adam Warlock is active, your character dies when fielded effects trigger twice. I think this card is hugely interesting, as when fielded effects are some of the most powerful in the game, and being able to double up on when fielded effects is even stronger. I like that they put this on a 5-cost card and not something that is turn 1 buyable, because it does create a little bit of a balance craziness if you put it on something that you can get early. There's a lot of teams that this benefits. Stuff like Common Firefly that pings your opponent and just does direct damage. Even the rare Batgirl from the new Batman set that gives all of your Bat characters +1/+1 when she's fielded gets really, really crazy because she's a 3-cost, and so you can field her multiple times and buff a ton of characters for some crazy amounts, right? Fielding 2 of her is a 4/4 buff for all of your Bat characters. So you can do some pretty crazy stuff with this card. I think this definitely sees play in constructed, depending on how many win fielded effects are in this set, which as of right now doesn't look like there's a ton of really valuable ones. Probably doesn't do very much in draft, but this is a constructed gem. I'm looking forward to this card. I wish I would have pulled this one because I would have already put it on several teams and played those for you guys to watch, because this is just going to be that crazy. In a game where you only have 8 slots on your team, power creep is a real thing, meaning, if there's a really, really powerful card, it's really hard to cut that for something because you only have 8 slots. It's really hard to make cuts. I think this does make the cut in highly competitive scenes just because of the damage that you can do with something like a Firefly's when fielded effect. It's really, really crazy. And the beautiful thing about this card is it's already countered by a card, another 5-cost in the game, in the meta, in Wonder Woman that was just released. So there's this really cool counterplay with that card and this card sort of playing against each other. So you'll have to do some dancing just like you will with the Shriek that comes out later in this month. So I think this card is really cool. I like that they've introduced it at this point where there's a counter, and I think it has a lot of power potential. All right, the uncommon version of Adam Warlock says that when he is KO'd by combat damage, move any character dice that damaged him to his card. When fielded, when he comes back out on the field, return those character dice to their owner's field zone at the same level. So basically you remove them from the game if something has KO'd him, or multiple character dice have KO'd him, and they only come back if he is fielded again. So really quickly, let's cover the really cool combo that goes along with this card. So this card, Adam Warlock, the uncommon version, combos really well with this Madam Web that I opened, this rare Madam Web from the same set, which says when Madam Web attacks, you can pay 2 energy, and if you do, all opposing character dice must block her this turn. If you put that with Mutation and actually use Mutation's ability to swap out Madam Web during the globals portion of the attack step after blockers are assigned with her ability, pulling everything, swap her with Adam Warlock, who was in your used pile, then assuming that Adam Warlock still dies because you used this at the right time and didn't use it when there's just like some sidekicks out on the field. If you do all of those things, then everything that deals damage to Adam Warlock, which is everything your opponent has, goes to Adam Warlock's card, and then just stays there because your goal at that point is to just never field Adam Warlock again, which is a really, really cool combo, and you can pull it off for, what, 12 energy and some good timing. It's also worth noting that that combo is possible to put together in draft, which I think ups this card's value. And even if you don't put together that combo, this card just presents your opponent with a tough decision, right? Do they chump block every time when you attack with him and then let this thing stay out in the field and kind of keep having to roll sidekicks? Do they let it through and take 6, 5, or 3? Do they choose to KO it and then just have something pulled? Probably never do that one. So you're either getting damage through or you're just constantly making them do something that's probably out of their win condition. So all in all, I think this card is definitely worth picking up in draft. It provides you some really nice upside while making it hard on your opponent for choosing blockers. In Constructed, this sees play in exactly that combo team. I'm not exactly sure if that's a tournament level combo, though it does play a lot like Imprisoned, and in that sense it definitely could be something that's tournament level. It takes a lot of kind of moving parts rather than just buying a 3-cost Imprisoned and then taking all your opponent's stuff, or running that Beholder combo that was really popular. That being said, it could be pretty strong, so I'd keep my eye out for this one. Alright, on to Agent Venom. Agent Venom, we know all 3 of his versions in this set. He's a 4-cost mask character with that Guardians affiliation on all 3 sides, on all 3 cards, excuse me. On his sides, we have an 033, 144, 155, which is pretty decent for a 4-drop. Really nice fielding costs overall. His first version, his common version, has Call Out. Let's talk about Call Out really quick. Call Out is really, really good. Call Out is great because you're basically breaking the rules of engagement, right? Not allowing your opponent to declare blockers the way that they choose, and instead choosing what engages with this 4-4 or 5-5 or even just a 3-3 is really, really powerful because it puts more control into your hands. If, for example, you want that multiple man out of the field, or you want that Shriek out of the field, all you have to do is call them out. Now, they don't actually have to block with that character because the ability says may block, but if they don't block, then they're taking whatever damage you're pushing. So it's essentially making this character unblockable. So it puts them in a terrible position, and it adds some interesting counterplay to these cards that we were really afraid of being just unbeatable, super powerful cards like Shriek. This card is really good in draft. This card is pretty good in Constructed as well. I think it's got a good stat line that kind of backs up a decent purchase cost and a really great ability in Call Out. I see this being really powerful, and I recommend picking it up in draft and seeing what you can do with it in Constructed. The uncommon version says that when he attacks, he gains +2/+2 if he is the only attacking character die until the end of the turn. That would put him at a 5-5, a 6-6, or a 7-7. That's a pretty good stat line buff, and if you give him Overcrush, then this is actually kind of worth playing around with. It reminds me of the old school Wolverines from those first couple of sets that could buff itself pretty highly. It's not obviously that powerful, but it is a 4-drop, and it's pretty approachable overall. The fact that it has to be the only attacking character die kind of knocks it a little bit, putting this in draft not as good as it could be, and putting it in Constructed probably not very playable, but I think it does still have a place in draft and can really win you a few games by just going out and punching your opponent in the face. Agent Venom's rare version says, when fielded, gain control of a target opposing sidekick, return it to your opponent's field zone on its level 1 character phase at the end of the turn, regardless of its location. So this is an interesting ability in that it can steal an ally. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow, when you field it, the ability to attack with it, because the way that gaining control of character dice works is that the die that gains control of your opponent's die can't attack alongside of it. The only one that can, or allegedly can, is that Jervis Tetch that I put on to the Owlman team. That's the only one that's different in the sense of gaining control of opposing characters. So what you can best hope for is that you gain control of one of your opponent's characters, a sidekick or an ally, attack with it that turn, and then have this sort of as backup when your opponent backswings on their turn. And looking at it that way, it's actually not that bad, right? It's just delayed gratification. You can't attack with this 5-5 until you attack with this 1-1 or ally if your opponent's running allies for some reason. And if for some reason your opponent is actually running allies, then you could have this really cool turn where you take their ally, attack with it, either get it KO'd or deal some damage with it, and then it goes back onto your opponent's field zone at a level lower than it was before, because this puts it back on level 1. So if it was on level 3, now you're spinning it down and dealing damage or KOing something else of theirs. So it does have some upside if your opponent is running something other than just a sidekick that you steal. Outside of that, this probably doesn't see a ton of play unless allies become a really big thing, and there are not a ton of allies out there that you want to rush out and play. So this doesn't see play in Constructed is my guess, and this may see limited play in Draft just because of that stat line and being able to take someone's stuff and keep it. In Draft, that has more utility than it does in Constructed right now, but that may change. We'll see. Last up, we're going to look at Angela. We have all 3 versions of Angela, and all 3 versions of Angela are 4-cost Bolt characters with the Guardian affiliation. Her stat line is an 023143144, and her common version is amazing. It says, while Angela is active, your opponent's win attacks abilities deal no damage. So for the past 2 years, the competitive Dice Masters scene has really been ruled by 3 different decks, and one of those is a win attacks ability focused deck that centers around the rare Lantern Ring from the War of Light set that provides all of your characters this win attacks ability. It's really crazy. If you don't know it, go look it up. It is called Limited Only by Imagination. It is very powerful. This card is the first real answer to that card. It's the first real answer outside of removing the die itself, the continuous action that provides that ability. This one just totally shuts it off. This is a 100% constructed meta-worthy card. If you want to play in a large-scale tournament, if you want to go to Nationals and Worlds, and the meta is still made up of Lantern Ring, then this card is a must-include, and it's going to be great. Now, I will say, of course, it can be card text wiped and all of that sort of thing, so it does, again, create counterplay. Your opponent can get rid of this card. They can wipe the card text and then use Lantern Ring, so it doesn't completely remove Lantern Ring from the meta, but it does do what I think was much needed and nerf Lantern Ring a little bit. As far as Draft, I don't think this has nearly as much utility. This really does feel like it was made for Constructed and specifically made to counter Ring. I don't think this blocks Callout because Callout is its own keyword. It's not a win attacks ability, though they may rule that differently. As of right now, because of that not being able to stop Callout, I think this doesn't have a ton of utility in Draft. There are other better options, so go with something different. The uncommon version of Angela has Infiltrate, and Infiltrate says that when this character die is unblocked, you can return it to the field zone, and it deals your opponent 1 damage instead of whatever its attack value is. She also has the additional text that says when Angela uses Infiltrate, she deals an additional damage, so instead of dealing 1, she deals 2 to your opponent. So far, I'm not nearly as big on Infiltrate as I am on Callout. The limited play time that I've had with cards that have Infiltrate, I've found that it's really one of those things where if you're behind on the board, then it's never working, and you might as well just have a blank text card because that's what you're getting. And so you're really having to play ahead, and this just kind of gets you more ahead, keeps you on the board with those characters. But again, if you're ahead, you kind of want to just hit them in the face until they die, right? So it's this weird ability that I'm not sure how I feel about. On this card, I don't really see it being great. I guess the ability to deal 2 is good, but if you're pushing and it's unblocked and you can hit them for 4, assuming that you engaged correctly, you'd probably always want to hit them for 4. If they leave this unblocked and then you can return it to the field zone and prevent backswings, those are really the biggest moments where Infiltrate's good. When you're attacking and you're either tied or ahead on board, you push a little bit and they leave this one unblocked, hoping that it goes through into the use pile, but instead you bring it back. But again, if you're playing someone who's pretty good, they're going to see that it has Infiltrate, and they're going to try to play around that anyway. So the keyword itself doesn't really do a ton for me. I may be wrong about that, but that's how I feel so far. With regards to this card, I'm not big on this either. It is a 4-cost 4/4, which is not very good. You can get better stats in Draft. You can get better stats in Constructed, much better stats in Constructed, actually. And you look at Agent Venom, that's better stats across the board. So I don't see this being played in very many things at all. Now that I've hated on Infiltrate a little bit, let's look at a card that actually makes really good use of the keyword Infiltrate. The super rare version of Angela has Infiltrate and also says while she is active, your character dice with Infiltrate cannot be blocked and deal no combat damage. So if you fill your board with Infiltrate characters and then attack with them, they don't deal their combat damage even though they are unblocked. they just come right back to the field, assuming you want them to come back to the field, which I would assume you would, right? They just deal your opponent 1 damage each and then pop on right back. So it puts your opponent on this huge clock, slowly counting down, dealing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 for as many characters as you have until they die. Now, outside of the really cool combo that goes along with her, it also freezes the board state in whatever position you're in. So you keep all of your characters during your attack step, and your opponent keeps all of their characters. So you can kind of take advantage of this. Now, the unfortunate thing is that it doesn't allow your characters to block and to deal damage because their combat damage is always removed. So they will get KO'd when they block, and they won't KO your opponent's characters. Infiltrate characters seem understated for their purchase cost, so it's likely that they will KO, and then you'll have to re-roll them. But again, you're just focusing on keeping your characters in the field zone and clocking them over and over and over again. Now, in addition to that direct damage clock that you have going, you could actually run Polymorph, and then during the globals portion of the attack step, Polymorph out Angela for something else that doesn't keep your character dice from dealing combat damage. That way you can then push unblockable damage to your opponent's face to finish them off after clocking them for however many turns you need. And that's actually pretty achievable to do. You don't actually have to set that one up nearly as much as you do with the other Polymorph combo we talked about with Adam Warlock. This is much more achievable. So I think this one is much more playable, and I think that combo actually works fairly well. Do I think it'll be competitive? I'm not sure. We haven't seen every single card out of this set. I think there are a few Infiltrate cards that could be good, even though the stats don't exactly line up with what I would think you would need. But I think you can push enough damage with one final push and with that other clocking to make it workable. In draft, you draft this because it's a super rare, and you draft super rares when you see them. I think the only time you wouldn't draft a super rare is if you're playing in some really big draft tournament and you have some great team going and you've got that perfect card sitting in your hand. But I think you always just draft a super rare, man. Or maybe you have 3. I don't know. Maybe you have 3 of that card. All right, so there you go. There are the first 3 characters within this set. Let me know what you think about these 3 characters. Which cards, versions of them do you like the most? What do you think about that super rare Angela? Do you like that? Do you dislike it? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching.